So, without further ado, let's go ahead and start off in Orlando. We've got the Cure Bowl, UTSA taking on Troy this Friday, December 16th at 2 p.m. You can watch it on ESPN. Troy coming in as 1-point favorites. The over-under is set at 54.5. Man, this is a fantastic G5 matchup.
It really is.
And if it weren't for Tulane, I am pretty certain that UTSA would be going to the Cotton Bowl, because this year the Cotton Bowl is featuring a G5 team in Tulane. Mm-hmm. But I feel pretty certain if Tulane was not there, UTSA would be going into that. But of course, both teams coming off of really strong conference championship wins over their respective opponents. And I think the matchup is this UTSA offense and Troy defense, because on the offensive side, you've got Frank Harris, you've got Zachary Franklin, you've got one of the most prolific passing offenses in all of college football against a really stellar and stout Troy front seven.
Yeah, you got the secondary for Troy, which is what really put them over the edge against Coastal last week in the Sun Belt Championship. You know, I do like that the Sun Belt and Conference USA do the champion versus champion bowl tie-in. And Troy's been the class of the Sun Belt this year, obviously without, I believe Grayson McCall was out for Coastal last week, so that kind of put a damper on their championship game. But regardless, Troy, you mentioned, was stellar on the defensive side of the ball. Offensively, they're fine. They're not great. I would honestly put UTSA's defense as an advantage in that scenario. Gunnar Watson's a pretty good quarterback for them. He's a multiple year starter now. But yeah, I think this comes down to the strength versus strength matchup. UTSA is obviously, I think they just announced that Frank Harris was the MVP, offensive MVP of this Conference USA this year. I mean, he's having an incredible year. He's going to have probably a statue or something somewhere on campus. He may or may not have a big announcement later today as we're recording this. You know, UTSA's reported a press conference with him, coincidentally with some big donors with the program. So maybe there's an additional year of Frank Harris coming soon. We'll see. I believe that's at 3:30. But regardless, all these guys are going to play in the bowl game. It seems like UTSA is about as healthy as they can be. I know Rashad Wisdom's out with injury. A couple other guys, I think JT Clark, might be out with injury. But everybody else, more or less, you mentioned Zachary Franklin, Josh Cephas, those guys. It's going to be a celebration because UTSA also has not won a bowl game, right?
Right, they're 0-3, I believe, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so this is going to be it's not the end-all, be-all if they lose this game, right? Their big moment was winning another conference championship, but they would like to add a bowl trophy, right?
Right.
And they finally, Jeff Traylor, knowing Jeff Traylor, he wants to be able to add that. And if his team's as healthy as they look heading into this game, yeah, why not go for it? Last year they were kind of hobbled. You know, he mentioned how he was worried about guys not being able to suit out, things like that. Why not go for it and bring home a Cure Bowl trophy?
My concern, and you mentioned that UTSA is coming into this game pretty healthy, right? They played a really tough conference championship against North Texas about a week ago. Their bowl game is happening next week. They've had issues with injury on the offensive line. I mean, they've been having to start the third string offensive tackle, all season.
Right.
How healthy is this offensive line really going to be for UTSA? Because that right there is going to be an issue. If they're not coming into this game healthy.
Yeah, 100%. I think the layoff's going to help a lot, right? It's going to be a couple weeks before this game is played, and so we'll see. I feel like Jeff Traylor's not going to, the hard part of the season's done, right? This is a reward, right? The bowl game is a reward, and so they're going to definitely take it easy. He definitely probably have his guys all about rehab and recovery and things like that. They're probably going to field their healthiest team in a while, just to get everybody good to go. Just because I feel like he knows what UTSA represents kind of in Texas, right? His obviously background as a high school coach. And so he's not going to want to go out there and, with last year was unfortunate for what it was in the situation they were in. This year, I think he's going to try his best to avoid that. So I would imagine that these next couple weeks are going to be just mainly about recovery and getting the team back.
Flipping on to the Troy offensive side real quick before we move on, I have noticed that this Troy team can jump out on people super fast and not allow other teams to catch up with them.
Right.
And you can correct me if I'm wrong on this. I don't think that's much of a concern for this UTSA offense, because we saw them go down 24-0 against UTEP, and they ended up coming back and winning by 3 in that game. So do you think that's kind of a concern at all?
No, I agree with that
Yeah.
because Troy, the one thing Troy, when they played Texas State, which is the game I've watched in full this year from them, it was two teams struggling to score.
Yes.
Right? But we've seen Troy be able to, like you mentioned, if they get the first couple drives, scripted drives, right, they can sit on a game more or less. If they get a 2-score lead, it's hard to come back against them. But as you mentioned, UTSA is a team, if I were to bet on, that would be able to do that. One, I don't think that it'll get to that point because I think UTSA's defense is better than Troy's offense. So I don't think they'll be in a scenario necessarily they'll be down 2 scores, 10, 14, nothing or whatever. But regardless, with that being said, yeah, you mentioned it, if there's one team in the state, the country, then we're probably, I guess TCU's another one. But, there's only a handful of teams that you would bet on making a comeback like that. And so I think Troy's best foot forward kind of plays into what UTSA is pretty good at, which is not quitting, which is playing sound ball and or playing second half adjustment football, things like that. So yeah, I would say advantage Roadrunners in a lot of different ways.
Now, this is the first matchup, or I guess you could say meeting between these two teams in program history. So it's kind of a little bit of a different feel between these teams. They haven't seen each other. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of film being played on both of these teams. So with that being said, who are you going with, UTSA or Troy? I'm
going with UTSA. I'm going to go with them.
Agreed.
I saw this Troy team on offense just is not as impressive to me. It really is going to depend on if they can shut down Frank Harris, which he has not been shut. He's had pedestrian games, okay games, but he hasn't had a bad game. And I think Troy needs a bad game from him for this defense to really come through as the best unit on the field.
Right.
Offensively, I just don't think they have enough to be able to. Even if UTSA gets 1 or 2 shots and 1 or 2 breaks on offense, I think that's going to be enough to put away this Troy team. So
I agree. I think we can agree there. We're going to keep track of who we pick in each bowl matchup, and then we can come into the year with hopefully some good news. Maybe we can go 9-0 in this. That'd be pretty cool. But there you go. There is UTSA taking on Troy in the Cure Bowl.